How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to the second installment of Road to Pro. Appreciate you guys being patient with us, but if you guys haven't already, go ahead and watch the practice video for the second stop of the Bassmaster Northern Open. The tournament video, especially Kenny's first day, he did very well. And now this video you're watching here is the third installment for each tournament series. If you guys are new to the channel or new to our series Road to Pro, we do a practice video, tournament video, and a recap video talking about what our game plan was, some of the baits, rods, reels, line, etc. that we found success in, and maybe a 2020 look on where we messed up along the way, we feel, in our tournament series. So go ahead and check out the rest of this video and be sure to stay tuned for the last video installment. That is the Upper Chesapeake Bay that just happened here recently. So let's run over here to Kenny. He's going to tell you about how his tournament went, some things that had a little bump in the road, and then some tactics that he used that was kind of out of the ordinary from what the rest of the field was doing to have success there on Oneida Lake.
Hey, what's going on, guys? All right, so wrapped up the Oneida tournament a little while ago. Gonna be honest with you, this was a tough one to swallow. I was leading day one and ended up not really getting bit all that great on day two in the morning, and then ran into some mechanical troubles and ended up losing a couple hours of fishing time because of that, and then really couldn't get my head back on straight. Anyway, I guess I've just been kind of upset with that whole deal. Was really hoping for a top 10 at least at that tournament. Obviously, going into day two with a lead was something new for me, and actually brought a lot more pressure and higher level of stress than I would have planned on. But I think I'll be more prepared for how to deal with that in the future. But so just to kind of break down how the day went, got paired with another really nice co-angler. We went out and went back similar area where, or actually kind of the same area where my co-angler and I started catching them the day before. It wasn't the area with the biggest fish, but it was where I think we got the most bites. Productive area. It was good in the morning the day before, so I thought maybe we'd have a good morning bite there again. Try to do some of the same kind of stuff and ended up getting bit pretty much right away. Caught a smaller one to start, and then it wasn't too long after I got another bite in that same area, and ended up being another decent one. I think that second one might have been like 2.5, 2 3/4, so a pretty decent one. But overall, it was just less bites and smaller fish, and wasn't happening all that great. I think I left that spot with 3 fish. Went and ran to where I caught my big largemouth the day before, and I wasn't able to get bit there, but my co-angler caught 2. And then actually I take that back. Now that I think about it, I left that first spot with 2 fish, because then I knew I had that bed fish that I saved from the day before. I tried throwing at it the day before and it just really wasn't acting right, so I was gonna go back to it on day one, but then I ended up catching, I think, 3 more bigger fish, so I really didn't need it. So I strategically left it for day 2, and I pulled up there, and first cast I was like maybe 70 feet away. I couldn't even see the fish. I just fired a cast where I had my GPS waypoint marked, and it probably wasn't even all that close. That fish was fired up. It came over and got it, and that was about a 3-pounder, maybe a little over. So nice fish. So then we ran back to where I got my bigger bites on day 1, and hadn't even really started fishing there that much, and all of a sudden my trolling motor pedal gets, it started out really tight. Like I would have to push on it like to the point where I thought I was going to snap the steering cables in it. And then it got like super loose, and so I thought I'd maybe snap the steering cables in it. So I called the tournament director, and he's like, yeah, go ahead and get in touch with the representative from the brand trolling motor that I had. So I called that person, and he said, yeah, you'll have to bring it in. So I made a run. It was probably, I don't know, a 20-minute run to get back to the ramp. And then he took a look at it, and he said, yeah, you're going to have to put this thing on the trailer and pull it up. So somehow, some way, there was a guy that was at the, he was at the launch at that time. And he said, you know, if you need it, I've got the exact same trolling motor in the back of my truck, and I can help you out with that. And so the tech guy got a look at it, and he's like, yeah, you're going to need a whole new motor. And he didn't have one. So I ended up buying the random guy that was at the ramp, I ended up buying his trolling motor. So that was, I don't know, that was just crazy that he happened to be there right at the right time with the exact right trolling motor. So we got that one strapped on, and took maybe an hour or so to get it put on. Got back in the water, and I think all in all it was probably about 2 hours that I lost of fishing time. But like I said in the beginning here, it was tough mentally to get back into it after that point. So I went out, and by that time the conditions had really changed. It switched over from kind of a calm, partially sunny day to mostly cloudy with a decent amount of wind, like pretty good amount of wind. Felt like those conditions were right to go out to sort of an offshore area that I was fishing, and had pretty good success in practice. Went out there, and there was boats absolutely everywhere, on every single little place that I wanted to get on, all the little sweet spots. There was a boat everywhere. So that added to my frustration, and I ended up kind of running around a few different places, and just never could get anything going again. I went back close to the ramp and fished some of the stuff that was around there, and ended up getting one more small keeper. Brought my weight total up to, I think it was right around 9 pounds, and ended up weighing in 4 fish for 9 something, and wrapped up the tournament in 65th place. So I was probably just one fish out of the money cut, and I don't know, I think I only would have needed like 14 pounds on day 2 to get into the top 10. So it was easily achievable if I would have just, I don't know, if it made some better decisions. And I guess the mechanical things, like, that's just something that you have to deal with, and unfortunately it's one of those things that you maybe can't control. That's just part of the game. But yeah, with the amount of time that I had, I still should have been able to go out there and catch a limit, and should have had a decent limit at that. So anyway, ended up being a kind of a fun deal leading day 1. A little disappointing, and stung a lot how it ended up. But anyway, just thought I'd share some of the baits as well. So I said share some of the baits, but in reality it was really just one. I think maybe I got the drop shot out to catch that last fish on the end of day 2, but all of the rest of the way fish and all the fish I called out on day one just came on this Senko. They're up shallow and they're cruising around, and kind of a slow falling Senko is really hard to beat. And the rod that I really like, the setup that you guys have probably seen a few times now, is this Legend Extreme from St. Croix. It's a 7-foot medium power. I think their Legend Extreme looks a little bit different now, but it's similar kind of rod. It's really nice, and I like pairing that up with this 3000 size Shimano Stratic. This has also been replaced by the Shimano Vanford, or the Stratic. They still have one that's like a silver color, silver and blue. That's a really good reel too. But anyway, I had that on 10-pound braided line, Suffix 832 advanced, with a 8-pound Seagar Tatsu leader, and then I was throwing the Yamamoto Senko, the traditional 5-inch in green pumpkin with black fleck. And a lot of times with smallmouth, I like going down to the 4-inch size, but I had this one rigged up, and I had a 4-inch rigged up, and my co-angler, I think on day one, he caught the first couple of fish on the 5-inch size, and that was enough of a sign for me that I had to just keep that 5-inch in my hand the rest of the day. What was nice about that was I was able to cast it out quite a bit further. That 4-inch is a little bit lighter and harder to cast, so it was nice to get the extra distance out of the 5-inch. But I like throwing that on that size number 2 Neko Hook from VMC. It's a really good hook for drop shot and also for wacky rig, and really like it a lot. Always have really good hookup ratio with it. So yeah, that was kind of the main pattern to it. The thing wasn't really, I think there could have been a number of different baits that would have worked there. It was more so just putting in the work to find those fish in practice. I think I may have said this in my earlier recaps, but I spent a ton of time during practice just on the trolling motor, looking around with my eyes and just trying to identify where there was some better sized smallmouth swimming around. And I guess got a little lucky to find the tournament leading areas on day one, and hopefully next time I am in that position, I can capitalize better. But overall, good tournament, and kind of exciting, and shows me that I at least can find the right quality of fish, and next time hopefully everything all comes together.
So there you have it. There's Kent's way of breaking down Lake Oneida. We're going to have all the products and stuff like that in the description below. We're going to jump into my tournament. Jumping in right from the get-go, Kent knew that he was going to go in and chase smallmouth. I did a little bit in practice, probably the second or third day. My main game plan was to get off the main lake, off into some backwaters. I found a ton of vegetation back there, fish really shallow, and that's where I am most comfortable at. I can just turn the graphs off and not even have to worry about technology, and just go to fishing visual cover that I can see. I spent a few days doing that and never had much success doing it, and so I was a little bit disheartened, and finally that I needed to go quote-unquote offshore, away from the bank, and pursue those fish that were on the main lake, and that's exactly what I did. Finally, I had to turn my graphs on, went scanning, and was able to fish some stuff that's quote-unquote offshore, but my stuff ranged from 5 feet to 15 feet. I just wasn't on the bank, so still some of the stuff was still pretty shallow. Most of it was just rock. Oneida's known for that. I didn't know that till I got there, and there's rock absolutely everywhere. And I was fishing for largemouth, and we'll kind of break down my techniques here that I used. I did throw a little bit more of a finesse style. My co-angler on the first day did really well. He was throwing a drop shot kind of in the grass, but it was kind of a one-off thing. If he didn't get bit right on the first initial fall, that grass would gang up so much on your bait that you weren't able to you know, fish it effectively. But he did get some good fish doing it. Just drop it in and wiggle it. If nothing there, reel it up and try it again. Don't have one rigged up right now, but it's just I was running a VMC Finesse Neko Hook and a half-ounce Swagger tungsten drop shot weight. Running this on my now go-to drop shot and shaky head rod. This is the Cast King wide-eye walleye 7-1 power jig rod, and I've got, figure out what size this is. Well, it's a 3000 size Cast King Spartacus 2 spinning reel. I'm running a 15-pound super power braid main line to a 15-pound leader. So a little bit beefier up, but I was around a lot of grass, so I want a little beefier up stuff. I would say my workhorse, I don't have one rigged up here, but I'll show you the components that I have. My workhorse for Oneida, actually, I stumbled upon or had an idea of it. I'd never fished it before, 2 days before the event, and that is a Neko rig. If you guys aren't familiar, look it up on YouTube. I've got the components here that I use, not the exact worm, but kind of the same setup here. But a Neko rig. I've never used a Neko rig before in my life, and it was just something that I wanted some super finesse thing, because there's tons of boat around me, and the rock piles got murdered in practice. And so going into practice, or the second to last day of practice, I was like, man, I need to find a super finesse way to, not just a drop shot, because they see drop shots, all that kind of thing. I couldn't get them on a jig. Super finesse way to keep a bait on the bottom and just try. It was just an idea I had, and I rigged one up and I started getting bites on it. So going into practice, my plan was, or the tournament, excuse me, is I'm going to throw the spinner bait, swim bait, moving baits across these rock piles, see if there's active fish, and then I was going to slow down with the Neko rig. I don't have a package, but it was basically the same thing. This is a Zoom trick worm. It's kind of the same concept. It's a do nothing straight tail worm. I was using kind of a lighter color green pumpkin. It didn't have a hot tip tail in there, but these are kind of the resemblance I had. And then I read my band about 3/4 of the way down the worm. These are your surgical tubing or bands or whatever. These are actually Arsenal bands that Kent let me use. So shout out to Arsenal once again. Not a sponsor or anything, but I like their products. That's a company that Kent partners with, so it's pretty cool to use some of his stuff. But I have it up there. I'd have I can't remember the size of hook, but a VMC Neko Hook, and then you rig your hook up and out. So when you're dragging the bait towards me back at the boat, the hook point is actually pointing back, so it's like this, and so it kind of comes through grass pretty well. I did have some of these before I went out there, and luckily I was playing around with weights, but the best one I found, this is a 16th ounce Swagger tungsten nail weight. Tungsten nail weights worked good. They're a little bit smaller, so they can slide into the bottom of the worm easier, and you put a little super glue on there if you'd like. But that was kind of the deal, and I just drug that with the same combo, 7-1 wide-eye walleye, Cast King wide-eye walleye power jig rod, same setup, 15-pound mainline braid, to a I think I went down to a 12-pound fluorocarbon leader, cast it out to let it hit the bottom, and I'd slowly drag it, and you'd feel that tungsten just tick a little bit, and I'd sit there and barely wiggle the rod. Usually with a drop shot, I wiggle that rod a little bit more. Here I wasn't 100% sure. I don't want to be super finesse technique, and so I just wiggle that top, I reel down, pull a little bit, wiggle more, and I get a bite. And on day one, if you haven't watched the tournament, I got like 6-7 bites, but for some reason they were biting the worm, and it could have been rock bass, but I only hooked up with a couple of them. But the Neko rig, and rig that I'd never thrown before, that was the rig that actually, you know, gave me a lot of confidence to slow down in these areas. And then day two, the drop shot got one, and the Neko rig got one for my 2 fish I was able to weigh in. Last and certainly not least, an honorable mention. I like to do an honorable mention. This rig I never threw in practice. I had it rigged up. I still got the same one rigged up here. Shows you how much I don't throw it. It's still rigged up. But I was throwing a swim bait, and I had a fish follow me to the boat. Oh my God. That was a 3-pounder. Don't know what to do for a follow-up bait. I had that fish follow me to the boat. He was tip to tail on that swim bait, and then he just faded off. And I never threw this in practice, and I don't really throw a wacky rig very much, but it's a wacky rig. It's a 5-inch Cinco. This wacky hook, I can't remember the name of it. I bought them so many years ago, and like I said, I hardly use a wacky rig. But it's weighted here, but it's also got a wire that protrudes out of the weight, and it hooks around. So you got to bend that wire, and it sits right in front of the barb there. You see in that video, that fish came down. I didn't know what to grab, and so I grabbed it, let this thing, and it's weighted, so it falls a little bit faster than normal. It fell down to the thing, and I'm just sitting there wiggling it, and I go to wiggle, and the thing was hooked up, so it was a 3.5 pounder. So the right quality fish that I needed. But this is a little bit shorter rod. I throw this with a lot of small stuff, or it's my river rod if I'm fishing from the bank, stuff like that. But this is a Cast King wide-eye walleye power jig rod, but this is the 6/8 version, so it's a little bit smaller. This one is a medium, the other one, the 7-1's a medium light. And then a new reel that I've been trying out this year. This is Cast King Royale Legend 2 reel there. This is a different braided line. This is a braided line that is specifically designed for spinning reels. This is the Cast King Cast Pro 13X line. Again, it's a 15-pound main line. This one I was running again to a 15-pound leader. I was able to, get that fish in, but this line specifically is designed for spinning reels. It's got a thinner diameter. It's a little more supple, but that stuff just casts a mile. So I was testing that out on this reel, and a couple of the other reels that I don't have out here today, but testing out with some more of my finesse techniques, light hair jig, stuff like that. And it's pretty good stuff. So not my best tournament in the Opens, and unfortunately not my worst. I finished 204th out of 225 boats. I think I finished 220th on the James River. So, I mean, I didn't blank. It's horrible goals to have, but my goal is to obviously get one fish to walk across the stage, say hi to my wife, and then bring in 5, and I just didn't get it done. I had the bites on day 1. I just didn't get hooked up. I was around the right quality. My co-angler caught one that was over 6 pounds. But day 2, I got 2 bites right away in the morning. In the first hour, I thought we're going to get our 5. We're going to grind it out, and it just never happened. My co-angler had about 9 pounds again with 3 fish. So I was around the right ones. What exactly I believe happened is these rock piles were in amongst the weeds, and I was catching fish when it was windier, kind of like it is out today, overcast, or even sunny when it was windy. When I found some of these areas, fish were up on these rocks feeding. I call it they were at the dinner table. And when the tournament came, it slicked off, blue skies, bluebird days, whatever, and no wind. I was fishing the dinner table, and quote unquote, I believe the fish moved off the rock piles and were sitting in the weeds, aka the living room. That's kind of how I explained it to everybody. I was fishing the kitchen, thinking they were up there feeding, when actually they're out there chilling in the weeds in the living room. And what my co-anglers did on day 1 and day 2, like I said, were fan casting stuff, and they get snagged up in weeds. But if they, I don't want to say it's an accident, not trying to take away what they did, because they did a good job, but they threw it in front of a fish, and the fish will come up and eat it, that kind of thing. And I never got my bait in front of a fish like that, because I was solely focused on my rocks in front of me. So I think the fish had moved off, not necessarily because of pressure, because I didn't see many boats around me. Didn't fish around hardly anybody, so the fish were there, the quality was there. It actually surprised me how good a fish I was around. I just didn't get to catch them. My co-anglers did. And yeah, when the fish are in the grass, they can move around a lot, and I didn't adjust, because in my mind I couldn't find anything that worked efficiently to bring it across those weeds to cover a bunch of water. If I was swimming a spinnerbait or something like that a lot, and you let it fall too slow, I'd reel it in and there'd be a weed broken off hanging on that spinnerbait, like I mentioned, and I didn't feel like I could make long casts and bring it in, because I felt like 3/4 of the way or the whole way there's a weed on my bait, and the fish isn't going to eat that. So for me, I still don't know what I could have done to swim stuff over those weed areas, because they were massive. I was in a giant flat, and so it was just trying to find a small area where those fish were hanging out, and I just couldn't figure it out. But Yeah, it was more of the finesse stuff. I did get a couple of those fish on day 2 that were actually up on the rock piles and stuff like that. So surprisingly, I wanted wind. Most of the time the smallmouth guys wanted a little bit more wind, but I think my bites, when I look back at my notes, my bites were best when we had overcast and windy days. So again, not my best tournament, but I learned a lot. The Neko rig is something that I'm hopefully going to be used more in the future. I'm not much of a big finesse guy, but I think it's something when I'm fishing harder structure that I should be able to use and hopefully have good luck with. So thanks for watching, guys, from myself and Kent. Stay tuned. The Upper Chesapeake Bay up in Maryland, Cecil County, Maryland, and the last stop for the Bassmaster Northern Opens will be dropping soon. Check out our practice video, tournament video, and then our recap videos as well. I want to thank you guys for watching. Tune in next time to Road Pro.